Right, I'm going to be doing a tier list video, as they seem to be all the rage, and I'll be doing it on the best managers ever to manage in the English Football League. I did a 4-part series recently about whether if Chelsea were a big club before Roman Abramovich took over. If you look on the link above, you can look at the 4-part series in a playlist. But I was going to make a video to summarise everything, and I was going to say that it's not only having a good chairman at the helm who's generous and puts in a lot of money, but it's also just as good and vital to have a decent manager on board as well. Because if you look at Manchester United now, for instance, they're throwing money around left, right and centre, but yet they still haven't found that winning formula since Alex Ferguson left. Kevin Keegan was the same when he was at Newcastle. They splashed lots of money. That didn't bring them success. So money helps, but a good manager is even better. So for this tier list, I'm going to be looking at 5 different categories. The first one's going to be a worth a mention. Some managers I think are good, who are worth a mention. Next up I think are good managers. And then the next tier up is going to be very good managers. Then the level above that is going to be great managers. And finally, I'm going to do what I call the legacy managers, or the managers who really made a massive impact over a certain amount of years. So if you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button, the thumbs up, and bell notification if you want to see more of my content. Right, first of all I'm going to start with the worth a mention list, but before I do that I'm going to list some people who are not on the worth a mention list, but I'm going to mention them anyway, if that makes sense. Right, so I'm going to mention, obviously being a Chelsea supporter, Gianluca Vialli. Whilst he was at Chelsea, he won an FA Cup, Cup Winners' Cup and a League Cup. Although the Cup Winners' Cup and League Cup were kind of shared with him and Hullet, because Hullet, he took over in the second leg of the semi-final of the League Cup, and I think we were in the quarterfinals of the Cup Winners' Cup, so I'm going to give it to both of them really. So yeah, credit to Reid Hullet again, but they don't make the list at the moment. And there's another surprising name missing from my list, and that's the World Cup winning manager, which is Sir Alf Ramsey. When doing my research, although if it was for England managers it would be on that list, but his club record wasn't great. I think it was 1 league title at Ipswich, and his record prior to that at Ipswich was okay to average. So I don't think he deserves a spot on my list, but I'll give him a mention anyway for winning the World Cup for England, so well done, Alf. Right, okay, so my worth a mention list. The first person on this list is Roberto Di Matteo, obviously being a Chelsea man as well. So anyone who wins the Champions League is worth a mention. There's only, what, 5 or 6 managers who won the Champions League? Is it 6? Yeah, I'll come back to some of those later. But so he won the Champions League and the FA Cup whilst at Chelsea. The reason he's only on my worth a mention list is obviously he didn't stay long enough, and the second season ended in disaster with him leaving not even halfway through the season. So yeah, he just gets a mention. Next up is Howard Wilkinson. Howard Wilkinson won the last first division, as it was before the Premier League began, with Leeds United, which was no mean feat because Leeds at the time weren't struck. I think he took them up from the second division, then he won the league with them, and he also did a decent job at Sheffield Wednesday when he was there, and they were constantly finishing in the top 6 around about that time. So he's also another one who's worth a mention. Antonio Conte, another Chelsea man, 2 seasons in the Premier League. He won the FA Cup while he was here, and he also won the league. And he sort of revolutionised the way that teams played when he introduced the 3 at the back, 3-5-3, and a lot of teams has adopted that style the season after, and he kind of changed the way that people played in the Premier League whilst he was there, and he also went on, was it the 16-game unbeaten run, which has now been overtaken by Pep Guardiola and probably soon to be equalled by Jurgen Klopp. So obviously for that alone he deserves a mention on this list. Next one is Tony Barton. Again, as I said, if you've won the European Cup, not everyone's won the European Cup / Champions League. So Tony Barton won it, albeit he took over from another guy who's going to be on the next tier list. So he took over late in the quarterfinals, I believe, but he still took them to win that trophy, so he's got to be worth a mention for that. Next up is Ron Atkinson. Ron Atkinson, he managed 3 teams, I think West Bromwich Albion, he managed, Manchester United, Sheffield Wednesday and Aston Villa. And in that time he's won 2 FA Cups and 2 League Cups. So he won the 2 FA Cups, I think it was Manchester United, and he won trophies obviously for Villa and Sheffield Wednesday. So when you win trophies at 3 different clubs, yeah, you've got to be looked at on this list. So then we have Keith Birkinshaw. Keith Birkinshaw was the Tottenham manager at the time in the late 70s, and he was revolutionary as well in the way that he was the one who brought in Ricky Villa and Osvaldo Ardiles, and they were 2 World Cup winners for Argentina at the time. So back in the day, not a lot of foreign players used to come to England to play football, so that was big news back then when he brought in these 2 World Cup winners to play for his team. He had his team playing some really good football as well, and he won 2 FA Cups and 1 UEFA Cup at his spell with Tottenham Hotspur. Okay, the last person on my worth a mention list is, I know it's a little bit biased because I'm a Chelsea supporter, but it's Dave Sexton. Dave Sexton won the FA Cup with Chelsea in 1970, and then he went on the next season to win the Cup Winners' Cup against the mighty Real Madrid. It was a pity he fell out with some of the players because he was building something at Chelsea at that time before the public fallout he had with Peter Osgood and Alan Hudson, which eventually led to his demise. He took over at Manchester United as well, and he had a long coaching career at England, so Dave Sexton just gets on my list because of what he achieved at Chelsea. So that's all the teams who are on my worth a mention list. So now we're moving up to the good manager list. So who makes that cut? Right, the first one is Claudio Ranieri, and the reason I've put Claudio Ranieri on it is because okay, his trophy haul may not be as much as some of the others on the list. He was at Chelsea for a while again, but he wasn't successful. He constantly finished in the top 4 with Chelsea, and he rebuilt that side, but his biggest feat was when he was at Leicester, and to win the league with a team like Leicester is no mean feat. When you think of Premier League now, it's mainly just the big 4 or 5 clubs who win it constantly, but he went to Leicester and he won it with them against all the odds, so he definitely has to go on that list as a good manager. Next up is Ron Saunders. I spoke about Tony Barton earlier, but it was Ron Saunders who won the league with Aston Villa, and he got Aston Villa to the quarter-finals of the Champions League that season, and it was just, I think he had a dispute with his board over money, that's why he left. But it was arguably his team that won the European Cup as well, because he done most of the hard work getting them to the quarterfinals. Then we have Carlo Ancelotti. Carlo Ancelotti only had 2 seasons in the Premier League, but anyone who can win the double has to be on the list somewhere. So he had a fantastic season at Chelsea, winning a double, breaking a lot of records as well. I think they scored over 100 goals that season, and yeah, he would have been higher, but obviously he didn't spend long in the Premier League, and so yeah, he comes in as one of the good managers. Then I've got Jurgen Klopp, Champions League winner for Liverpool and maybe Premier League winner in waiting. For me, he only makes the good list now. He may move up for in a couple of years if he stays at Liverpool, simply because he's been at Liverpool for 4 years now and he's only won one trophy. So I can't put him in any other bracket than good at the moment. So as I said, good for now, but with the potential of moving up further. Then you have Howard Kendall. Howard Kendall was the Everton manager back in the 80s. And remember, Liverpool used to dominate football in the 80s. Howard Kendall came in and he made Everton competitive. They competed with Liverpool and many battles with Liverpool, and also won a few trophies as well. They won 2 First Divisions, they won the FA Cup, and they won the Cup Winners' Cup under him. Some really good players, and obviously they gave Liverpool a run for their money. So yeah, so Howard Kendall gets on the list for that. Then we have Joe Fagan. I've just put him on the good list just because he took over from Shankly and Paisley, so that famous Liverpool boot room. So he carried it on, because obviously it's not hard if you look at Alex Ferguson now, for instance. He's left Manchester United and no one's come close to emulating what he's done. So Fagan carried on the good work left by the other 2, and he walked away with 1 First Division, 1 League Cup and a European Cup as well. So he's got another one, the European Cup, to his name. And finally on this list is Bobby Robson. Bobby Robson, okay, his trophy cabinet may not be great if you look at it. He's won 1 FA Cup and 1 UEFA Cup, but if you look at what he done with Ipswich, he kept them competitive for a while whilst they're there, and I think he got them to runners out one season as well, which eventually got him the England job. Then after a spell at Porto and Barcelona, he came back and he took over Newcastle after obviously he managed England, and he's made them competitive again, constantly finishing sort of in the top 4 before he retired. So for that, I think he has to be one of the good managers. And so next up we've got who I think are very good managers. So the first one on the very good manager tier list, I've put Don Revie. Don Revie for Leeds. He won 2 First Divisions, 1 FA Cup, 1 League Cup and 2 Interplayers Cup. Back in the 70s, Leeds were one of the most feared clubs. A lot of people say they're dirty. They got the nickname Dirty Leeds. And many a battle, one of them against my team Chelsea in the FA Cup in 1970. But yeah, Leeds, I think one criticism is that they should have won more in that era, because they were a very outstanding side back then. But he did win a fair few, but people think that they should have won more. I remember watching a game against, I think it was against Southampton on Match of the Day. That's one of my first memories of watching football when I was a boy, and I think it was 7-0, and they absolutely humiliated Southampton that day, and they were just teasing with them. It was brutal to watch. So yeah, Revie has to make this list. And next up is George Graham. Who can forget 1-0 to the Arsenal? George Graham came in when Arsenal were on a little bit of a decline. He got them playing good, solid defensive football, and he built from the back, and he obviously added the likes of Ian Wright and people like that to give them the goals up front. And I always remember one of the great games against Liverpool when they won the league with the final kick of the ball, Mickey Thomas scoring that goal. I whisper this, but I was elated because I just didn't like Liverpool back then, and it was so good seeing the likes of McMahon and the faces of Liverpool, how devastated they looked after they lost that game. So I was running around screaming like a madman, like I was an Arsenal supporter. Oops, did I say that? I shouldn't have said that, but back then I just wanted them to win so badly. So yeah, so George Graham gets on my list. Was it George Graham the manager? Yeah, it was George Graham the manager back then, yeah. So yeah, good record for Arsenal. Did as I said, 2 First Divisions, 1 FA Cup, 2 League Cups and 1 Cup Winners' Cup. So that's a fair amount of trophies that he won in his time for Arsenal. Next up, I'm looking at Stan Cullis. Stan Cullis was a Wolves manager, and it was, again, before my time. So he won 3 First Division titles and 2 FA Cups. But with Stan Cullis, what brought him to my attention was when I was making the video that I mentioned earlier about the Abramovich era. One of the things I did was looked at top 6 finishes, and I noticed that Wolves were in there quite a lot, which surprised me. And the reason why they're in there, and I want to bring up some stats in a minute to show you, Stan Cullis, when he was the Wolves manager, they hardly finished out of the top 6. So, you know, as you see on this caption, you can look at these 6, first, second, third, fourth. So yeah, he kept them competitive for a good while. So anyone who can do that with a side like Wolves deserves a mention. Up next is Herbert Chapman, again before my time, but Herbert Chapman I've read about a lot, and he's had success at 2 clubs, Huddersfield, where he won back-to-back titles. He should have won a 3rd one, but then after his back-to-back titles he went to Arsenal, and Huddersfield actually did win a hat-trick. I think that was unprecedented at that time. First team to win back-to-back-backs were Huddersfield, and it was basically his team what did it, so he can get some of the credit, although he wasn't at the helm at the time, but he takes some credit for that. So, and then we went to Arsenal, and he took them from a lower position to finish 2nd, and after that, a few seasons, he got his players, the players he wanted into the side. Then he won 2 more back-to-backs with Arsenal. So Stan Cullis is, Herbert Chapman's record is 4 First Divisions and 2 FA Cups, so that's 6 trophies, so good enough to get onto this tier. Right, Kenny Dalglish gets onto the tier list as a very good manager, because in his first spell at Liverpool he won 3 First Division titles and 2 FA Cups, and when he was at Blackburn he then went on and won another title. Then he went back to Liverpool for a 2nd spell and won a League Cup. So that's quite a decent trophy haul for him. And he wasn't part of the Liverpool boot room neither. So yeah, he has to be up there in that list as one of the very good managers. So now we're going to the greats. The first one I have is Bill Nicholson. Bill Nicholson's record is 1 league, 3 FA Cups, 2 League Cups, 1 UEFA Cup and 1 Cup Winners' Cup, and included in that was the 1961 double. And he made Spurs one of the best competitive teams in the 60s, and whenever you hear about Tottenham managers, Bill Nicholson's at the top of the list for that. And as I said, I didn't know a lot about them, and I won't forgive them for getting Jimmy Greaves off Chelsea, not off Chelsea, but he went to Inter Milan, then then back to Tottenham, and he scored lots of goals for Tottenham. So yeah, Bill Nicholson gets on that list for great managers. Okay, the next one on my list is the self-acclaimed special one, Jose Mourinho. But sorry, Jose, there's 3 managers more special than you on my tier list. But you still go down as one of the greats, so you're in the great manager category. When he came to Chelsea, he came with a reputation after winning the Champions League at Porto, and boy, he didn't fail to live up to expectations. He came in and broke all sorts of records, highest points total, most goals scored, least goals conceded, best goal difference. Yeah, and so as Alex Ferguson said himself, he absolutely raised the bar. Teams had to be at their best to compete with his Chelsea. And he didn't do that not only once, but he did it the season after with back-to-backs, and Chelsea were looking unstoppable at that time. And then obviously we all know what happened in his third season, and it's started to become a trend of third season syndrome for him. But he came back to Chelsea, and this is when Chelsea were going through a little lean spell, and he came back, made them competitive once again, and again he won a league and a League Cup. And then he went on to Manchester United, and although he didn't challenge in the league, I think he finished second once, he did win 2 trophies for them, a League Cup and a Europa League. So his overall tally was 3 Premier Leagues, 4 League Cups, an FA Cup and a Europa League Cup. And not only that, he also created a DNA within Chelsea. So although he's not credited for some of the other trophies that they won, a lot of the players who were still playing for the club at the time still had that mentality that Jose Mourinho had instilled into them. So Jose, special, but not quite that special, so you are in the great category. Then Bill Shankly started the legacy for Liverpool. He took Liverpool from the second division. Liverpool was a second division club at the time. He got them promoted, and he made them competitive again. So Bill Shankly came in and he won 3 League Cups, 2 FA Cups and 1 UEFA Cup while he was there. And he set the base. He built the foundations for Bob Paisley to then finish the house. But it was Bob Paisley who started all of this Bill Shankly who started all of this for Liverpool. Then I'm going to have Pep Guardiola out there. So Pep Guardiola, as you know now, he's creating something big at Manchester City. He's broken all sorts of records at Manchester City, most points, most goals, everything there is to every record there is, apart from the least goals conceded, which is still held by Chelsea under Jose Mourinho. But Pep Guardiola has given us a level of football that we haven't seen in the Premier League before. So he's obviously can't go into the top category yet, simply because he's not been here long enough to create that sort of legacy. But since he's been at Manchester City, he's won 2 Premier Leagues, 2 League Cups and 1 FA Cup. He still needs to win that big one as well to move him up the other tier. So he's got that, the one with the big ears to win before he can become close to being a legacy manager. Next up is Arsene Wenger. Again, was in 21 years, I think it was, at Arsenal. Fantastic manager whilst there, and 3 Premier Leagues and 7 FA Cups. 7 FA Cups is quite impressive, really, because that's more than most teams have won in their history. He's done it for one club. He kind of ran out of steam towards the end of his Arsenal tenure. Should have maybe, if he had retired 2 or 3 seasons before. But then again, having said that, he left them with 2 FA Cups, so he still made them competitive towards the end of his career. So plaudits to him for that. So someone he actually, when he came in as well, he was the one who introduced a different kind of style of football to the Premier League. There's a great passing, patient build-up, and just good football, which was a joy to watch. And a lot of teams emulated him after that. So we got Wenger to thank for bringing in a more cultured style of football, because we're used to the more industrial type of football, but he did bring in a different way of playing. And then we have Brian Clough. Brian Clough was a difficult one because I was going to put him in the top tier, the legacy category, but for me, this just didn't win enough. If he had got into double figures for winning trophies, then he would have been there. I had him in there for a while, and I kind of toying, should I have him in there or not? But in the end, I couldn't really justify putting him in the top bracket, so I'll just put him in. I'll put him at the top of the great managers list, just underneath the legacy. As I said, his trophy haul wasn't as great as some of the others. He won 2 First Divisions, 2 European Cups and 4 League Cups whilst at Nottingham Forest, but and Derby, sorry, not forgetting Derby. But what I liked about him is he took 2 provincial clubs in Nottingham Forest and Derby and made them good. You know, Derby, you gave him a league title, and then Nottingham Forest, out of the 8 trophies I think they've won in their time, I don't think they're all won under Cloughie, to win 2 European Cups for a smallish club like Nottingham Forest is a big feat. So you're looking at somebody like maybe Leicester winning the Champions League. It was that big a deal, but not once but twice, you know. And another thing to sort of slightly tarnish his career was that when he took over at Leeds, he only lasted a few months there before he was out. So question mark is, would he have been able to manage a really big club? Was he more a manager for a smaller club to make them great? So yeah, as I said, Brian Clough gets my uttermost respect, but he's just slightly under that top tier. And finally, the 3 managers who I have in my legacy manager. The first one is Bob Paisley. His record speaks for itself. 6 First Divisions, 3 European Cups, 2 League Cups and 1 UEFA Cup. That's a massive trophy haul. As I said before, Bill Shankly now built the foundations, but Bob Paisley built the house. Liverpool were formidable in that time, and when I used to watch Liverpool back in the day, that's why lots of my peers started supporting Liverpool. They used to play good football and they won everything. I wasn't going to jump on that bandwagon. A couple of my brothers jumped on that bandwagon after supporting Chelsea, but I stayed true to the Blues. But yeah, Bob Paisley was the man back then, and the Liverpool were just a powerhouse. Hansen and Lawrenson and people like John Barnes and people. Oh yeah, they were just very good to watch. But I used to despise them then, like I do now. So yeah, but you got to respect the man for all that he's done for Liverpool. Then you've got Matt Busby. Matt Busby has to be on that list. He's built not 1, not 2, but 3 different teams for Manchester United. He won 5 First Divisions, 2 FA Cups and a European Cup. We all remember the Munich disaster. You have people like Duncan Edwards there. A lot of them got killed in the Munich disaster. Edwards fortunately made it, but then so we had to rebuild that side. He made them competitive again. Then when they got a bit older, he brought in the likes of George Best, Bobby Charlton, and people like that, and they won the European Cup in 1968. So to build 3 great sides, you've got to be down as a legacy manager. And top of the list is only one person, and you know who that is. It's Alex Ferguson. His record speaks for itself. I can't say anything else about this man. All I can say is 13 Premier Leagues, 5 FA Cups, 4 League Cups, 2 Champions Leagues and 1 Cup Winners' Cup. Come on now, you cannot argue with those facts, yeah? And 2 other things, he too built 3 competitive teams in his time. He had the sort of the Giggs era, the Giggs, Scholes and Neville brothers. Then he brought in the likes of Ferdinand and Vidic, and then you had the Ronaldos, those sort of players. And so yeah, what he did, he kind of, what I liked about him as well is he was a manager who sort of, whenever a new style of manager came in, like Jose Mourinho, he would change his coaches. He would get different coaches in with new ideas for the team so that they continue to remain competitive. He answered every question. Jose Mourinho came in with back-to-backs. What did Ferguson do? Ferguson came in and won 3 in a row. So, and now all you need to do is look at what's happening to Manchester United. He's gone, they're a mess. They've tried 3 or 4 different managers, even one of the greats, Jose Mourinho, and it still hasn't worked out for them. Manchester United taking on that job is a massive job for anyone, because I said, if we look at the other guy on the list, Matt Busby, it took years for them, different managers. Some of them I've mentioned, like Ron Atkinson, Dave Sexton, Tommy Docherty, they've all come, tried and not succeeded. So it took Ferguson to come in and do it, and now they're struggling, and whoever can come in and replicate that will definitely get straight in this list as a legacy manager. But for me, Ferguson has to be at the top of that list. Longish video today, but lots of managers on here. Let me know what you think. Have I missed anyone? Because I did this all on the top of my head. I didn't really look at any old footages of managers, or so I just, all these were managers who just came to the top, came into my head. So there may have been some that I missed. Just comment below who you think should be on this list and why, and where you think they should be on the tier. Yeah, I'd like to know your thoughts, and if you like this video, just hit that bell notification, and I will see you on the next video.